What's up amigos, Commander Jaime here today. We're going to cover an updated Musketeer deck profile with the new Musketeer Deckset support. Musketeers is a deck that maximizes on both Katrina and Cecilia reverse synergy. Katrina is able to build a field with tokens that hit for hard numbers, but also during the battle phase can extend more attacks and ideally grab Cecilia reverse, so then in the follow-up attack it could actually rewrite as a new Vanguard, thus guaranteeing 2 Vanguard attacks with some superior calling aspect to it as well. To further increase the impact of this winning image, we use cards like Saul and Usurp. Saul is used to deck them, but not only that, but also activate triggers on demand, such as critical triggers, or even to increase criticals on your Vanguard or even your rearguards to increase that pressure. Usurp is there as a superior caller from the drop to further extend attacks in the battle phase and also serve as retired fodder for the Cecilia check top 5 skill to keep pushing. Thanks to the new deck set support, we have a better going first grade 3 turn than we did prior. We used to have fight for stride essentially, and a grade 2 game was only so good due to the history collection erratas that we got last year. Thanks to this, we're able to go into Virginal Cecilia assuming that you're ridden with the OG Cecilia, but also generate 2 force markers and really start ramping up the deck for the following turns. It's also worth noting that the GB count also increases significantly so that in the follow-up turn, you can easily generate your 4 to 5 tokens with Katrina.
Check out Dueling Guard's deck boxes, playmats, and binders. The great quality products that are anime-based. They continually have more anime options becoming available. Use the affiliated link in the description for a 5% discount on your next purchase.
So starting off the grade 3s, we are playing OG Cecilia. Again, it has access to the new Crest support, so you're able to do the superior strike during your main phase. This skill is not that bad actually. You can retire one of your Musketeers to check the top 5 for another one essentially, and it helps build up for the Virginal Cecilia skill, so that way you have enough Musketeer normal units in the drop zone to be able to recycle as well. The Limit Break 4 ability is actually inherited with Virginal Cecilia, but before you even use that skill, you want to make sure you take advantage of Virginal Cecilia's retire as many rearguards that you want. It's generic, but also check the top 7 for the equal amount of Musketeers and call them to the field. Then you can recycle your normal units with the OG Cecilia to be able to call 2 more original Cecilias, give them power, but also draw 2 more cards too. I will say this, that turn takes a while to process because you're constantly shuffling too. So I highly recommend play testing and practicing this turn so that way you can do it as efficient as quickly as possible as well. And also the main reason that I might play 4 is because I want to see this card as consistent as possible. We are not playing cards that check the top 5 for a grade 3, nor have the grade 2 V promos that check the top 5 for a grade 2 or less, that help a little more consistency such as with other decks. So I still play the 4 just to maximize on those chances, and of course use my mulligan to get to this one if I'm going first. This also serves as a Cecilia that you can use with Cecilia reverse to actually rewrite if need to be as well. You do miss out on the force marker, as we used to use the V series version of the Cecilia to still at least get a marker. 4 copies of Cecilia reverse, so this card is still our bread and butter. This helps promote multi-attack in the terms of a second Vanguard attack, potentially into 3 Vanguard attacks, which is doable. But you could also fall back as a restanding rearguard if need to be, especially if your opponent's able to get rid of your front row. You could at least have a restanding rearguard at that point too. This also generates force markers as soon as you write it as a Vanguard or as with its skill into Vanguard circle. So your force markers will accumulate, especially if you already done a Virginal Cecilia play where you already started off with 2 force markers. You want to play max copies because this card is that good, and also you want more easy access just in case they go to the damage zone, or you're hard draw into it, or you drive check them, which can happen. And then you can use your G-guards to be able to easily recycle your normal units that are essentially you're maxing out on copies to make that a little bit easier anyway. 2 copies of Usurp. I was playing 3 copies last year, but with like trying to fit in as many Cecilias and other cards like that, I reduced this to 2. And as you can see, if we do the Virginal Cecilia play, it really heavily depends on the Musketeer name. So it's even more important to make sure you use other cards during that turn. This card is only as great as that it can call itself as retire fodder for the Virginal Cecilia skill, but that's pretty much it for that turn as well. But this is still impactful once you do the reverse Cecilia because you can call not only one Usurp, but you can call the second one, so that way you have enough standing units to be able to redo the skill if need to be as well. We're playing 4 of the grade 3 heals. I've considered the Musketeer heal as well as a counter-charging, soul-charging aspect to it. There are other cards in my deck that I actually solve that issue or mitigate it as well, so it's not as needed. You need the grade 3s to be able to cost not only for normal strike, but also for Virginal Cecilia because it's the summation of grade 3s. This also helps you survive against other decks that are very aggressive too, giving your Vanguard plus 10k for the turn, or minusing crit 2 on them. This is also a great card to call with Saul because you can actually force activate the heal on your grade 2 turn or even later on, and it's still a 10k body to use, especially in the early game. Speaking of Sao, so Sao is essentially when it's placed on Vanguard Circle or Rearguard Circle, you can Soul Blast 1, retire any Rearguard. You can retire this if it's a Rearguard as well. You check the top 3 and call a card, and then again, you can Counter Blast 1 to force activate triggers. More than likely, you're going to be digging into pieces that you need during that main phase setup, but you could also do this during the battle phase to keep digging for like Cecilia reverses or just Cecilias in general to be able to extend to the 3rd Vanguard attack. But you could also force activate triggers even during the battle phase. This card also works in tandem with Rain Breath technically, so you can use it as a defensive play to check the top 3, and hopefully you do see a trigger and you can force activate that trigger during your opponent's battle phase as well. We also like to use this card as Soul Blasting out the Musketeers that are lingering in Soul over time as well, so that way you can easily recycle what you need throughout your turns. The next best thing is Tor, and so Tor has the same skill but in the cost of a counter less, and essentially if you do see 2 units with the Musketeer name, you can call both of them. If not, you just call 1 card. This gives you some flexibility because you can call counter chargers that are Musketeers but also then continue on with different cards such as like Saul or another copy of this as well, and you can keep generating a bigger field because it's technically a +1 as well, so it's a lot easier, especially during your original Cecilia place, if you can able to use a counterblast extra that turn to make that a little bit easier for you as well. I've seen players play 3 copies of this, that's perfectly fine. I've considered many times to reduce this to 3, but again, I feel like having a playset of the key Musketeers that you want to keep recycling, but also just see pretty much on your grade 3 turn and moving forward, if not your grade 2 turn as well, is such a great card in that aspect, so that I've kept it at 4, essentially. We have Sylvia over here as a token generator, literally on place, Vanguard Circle or Rearguard Circle, just create a plan token. This card really does wonders. One, it's a Musketeer name, so it works well with Virginal Cecilia, but also set up more tokens to do the generic retire. But then moving forward, also on Katrina turns, this helps fill up the board a lot easier. And also during your battle phase, you can call this with a Cecilia reverse from a check top 5 skill from Cecilia reverse already. This will give you the 3rd Rearguard to be essentially used as a standing unit. And then you can lock the token and this to promote the 3rd Vanguard attack still with the newly called Cecilia reverse. Hope that makes sense. I show off in the combo too. But overall, this card's really great. It's also 10k body. You can call this for the grade 2 game to have some pressure as well, while creating a token column, essentially, if need to be as well. 2 copies of Favila. This is still a card that I feel like is necessary, especially if you want to deal with some disruptive plays. This lets you get through at least one of them because essentially you give resist this and the Cecilia reverse that you call from a Katrina call, essentially, most of the time. But this could also activate if you keep like extending chain calling from the other cards, such as like Saul and Torre. And not only that, it gives it 6k as well for the Cecilia reverse to hit a little bit harder as well. But essentially you want to at least play 2 so that you have at least that 1 that you can call guarantee, and you can still do the thing that you want to do anyway. On to the grade 1. So an honorary Musketeer that is not actually a Musketeer is made of most sweet berry. And so this card is essentially you place it on Vanguard Circle, Rearguard Circle, create a plan token. And if your Vanguard's grade 3 or greater, you can additionally soul charge as well. It's actually mandatory at that point. This helps a lot with not only the token generation, which you do need in this deck, but also having some soul charging aspect as well. The last skill is during your turn, this card, as long as you have a Vanguard that's grade 3 or greater, this gets continuous +5. This is a 13k booster, 13k attacker. It's just a nice little effect that's an addition, but you use it mostly for the token generation. But it's also great that it's a V-Series grade 1. This is an 8k base, a 10k shield as well. You'd be surprised as you keep using other like Musketeer cards from the OG era and before. They're 5k shield, so you definitely value that. And we do play some of that and also some of the triggers, so that shield is pretty nice actually. 3 copies of Roof, and so this is one of your main counter chargers that is easily to use. When this unit or another unit is placed onto Rearguard Circle from the deck, you can retire this and counter charge 1. Super easy to use. This helps also make room for those massive chain calls that sometimes that you do with other cards too, especially if you have effects in the queue of generating more tokens and building the field that way. It's a really nice synergy at that point too, but really use that for that counter charging aspect. This is also a great grade 1 ride target because it creates a token when it rides on Vanguard Circle. And if your opponent's already at grade 1, you can call 2 tokens, which then I usually just call them to the column and have a 10k base column and then swing with that column and then attack with the Vanguard. So you're already hitting a bit hard starting at grade 1 if you're going second. 1 Susana and 1 Kiera. So these are like old school Musketeer cards from G era and Limit Break era. The Susana is essentially Soul Blast 2 to countercharge 2, which is phenomenal. This lets you aggressively countercharge during your main phase, but also during your battle phase if you do call it from deck, essentially. which can basically make a Cecilia reverse play happen because you need a counterblast for the actual re-ride and also a counterblast on the attack skill. So it frees that up essentially. This also helps you give you even more counterblasts if you want to abuse a card like Saul or Torre during that same battle phase or turn as well. Kiera is there not necessarily just because it's a PG, but it's nice that it's also a Musketeer, but it has a drop zone skill that we really like treasure. This can bind itself and then choose any of your card in your drop zone and bottom deck it, and then you can give a unit plus 2k. That 2k doesn't even matter, sometimes I forget about it as much, but the card you bottom deck can be an OT, it can be a trigger like a crit, it can be your Cecilia reverses, and it's also during your main phase, so you want to have some control aspect without running other grade 2s or other grade 1s that recycle. That I feel like this might be the best viable option outside of that. You can all, because you got to really think about, you're using your G-Guards such as like Robertina to recycle cards during your opponent's battle phase, and so you're limited to that, where sometimes where you proc your turn, and depending on what you drew or what you have left, then you can decide what you really need to recycle during that main phase for yourself. Onto the grade 0s, so you want to play a Musketeer starter. Not only it's V-Series to get you a shield, but it could come up especially if you want to recycle with Virginal Cecilia plays. We're playing 4 copies of the Musketeer crit still, so this card is also phenomenal, especially when it comes to countercharging. When it's placed by the effect of a Musketeer, you can countercharge 2. Phenomenal. This is a card that's easily abused with Saul too, because you pay that counterblast to activate it, but then you get countercharge 2, so you really countercharge 1 and get crit, which is cool as well. It is a 5k trigger with a 10k shield, but you make do. It's not the end of the world. So at the end of the day, it's still a crit, and it's also a fabulous effect as well. I've seen players reduce this to maybe like 2 to 3 copies as well, just to have some access to it, but not also be hit by the weak power up and the weak shield that it has. So play with the ratios that you feel more comfortable with. We're playing more crit in the forms of a Stride Fighter crits. You need to be able to stride later on with Katrina turns. If you really think about it, all your grade 3s, you want them in deck, or you want to pitch them, like such as their Serp. And so really the only cards for Stride Fighter are typically your heals and your crits. So you want to at least have some crits that you can pay for the cost of Stride if need to be as well. Still playing 3 draw PGs with an over trigger that's Blessed Favor. And essentially you can reduce the PG draws into more crits. You can use the 30k Sentinel crits if you want to, and make some room there. But if you want to use like some of the like Asha crits to get like the draw aspect of its damage check or fit in other triggers, then you may have to put in more Sentinel cards into your actual normal units. I've actually considered even playing like a second Kiera before, but I'm still kind of iffy on it because there's only so much room and you're trying to fit in a lot of stuff too. So that's why I ended up playing the ratios that I have already. But I do appreciate the draw power that you can get sometimes, especially with Saul or just your drive checks in general. If you think about it with your Cecilia reverse turns, you're going to see 5 drive checks at least, and if not 7 at that point if you do extend another Vanguard attack. Plus you're decked into an aspect, so you're going to see them in your drive checks or your damage checks, so it's nice just to have a healthy hand size on top of what you're already plussing. The Blessed Favor there is because it's just good, and most times, I mean, there are times that it can be challenging, again with the draws and even this, to be able to deck out. So you can play a different OT, such as like the blue OT, and it does like kind of the same thing that you wanted to do. That's not a bad choice either, but definitely experiment for yourself on which OT you like. Also, quick plug, I offer one-on-one coaching on Metafy too, so happy to help out with preparation for any Bushiroad events coming up soon. And even with this deck does take effort to actually learn how to play well as well, so happy to help out where I can as well. 1 copy of Harmonics because you need the ticket shield and potentially lock can happen. 3 copies of the Virginal Cecilia, so I essentially just play these so you can do the Persona flip, but also the flip for the Crest. It just requires any Musketeer, so I play the 3 at that point. Essentially, I'm only using it for that 1 turn if we do end up going first. If you go second and you can go into Katrina immediately, more than likely you're gonna keep Katrina until you need to like use Invierno in most games at that point. So that's why I only play the 3. Another great card at 3 is Katrina. So there are games that you definitely need to go into 2, and there are some games that you may need the 3rd one still. And so it's just a sweet spot there. The deck heavily relies on Katrina to have an impact, and again, most of the other strides are really more utility based. They're not giving you as much impact in terms of like attack pressure, so Katrina is still something that the deck relies heavily. Also 2 copies of Cyclone, so whenever you flip with Katrina, you give 5k for each token continues moving forward, so your tokens will become 20k and then eventually 25k on their own, which can hit 40 to 50k columns, and that really hurts to guard. 1 Invierno so you can recycle. You can also countercharge and soul charge with this as well, but you need at least 1 so that way you don't deck out and then just lose the next turn essentially. Ladislava's there just in case for those niche scenarios, so you can actually do searching with it, during your main phase. This actually comes up more in the Mega Colony matchup because it's already a bad matchup because you can't Superior Call a squat from deck if they Gridora you. So this is kind of like a mini Lambros in a sense. So as long as you have duplicates on attack, you can counterblast and stand them. And so if you already have rested units, you can restand them to have at least 3 attacks that way. But if you already have like standing units that are the same name, you can have 5 attacks at least. And you still have the force markers from the prior turns too. So you can at least take advantage of that force marker pressure still. I'm testing out one Zoa still, so just in case that it's that one-shot ability to win a game. It really hasn't come up for playtesting, so this card can easily be swapped out for something else. So feel free to mention in the comments that what do you play over Zoa? To the G guards, we have 2 Robertina. This card is phenomenal. It's important as well because it does a little bit of everything that you want in the G guard. It's a 30k shield. You recycle 2 normal units with the same name, which is like Cecilia reverses, your grade 2s, and so on. But also countercharge on top of that. Like phenomenal, really. And so I usually go through at least 1, if not 2 in a game. So definitely have the 2. You have Rain Breath. Again, you can have that play where you can call from hand and really extend with Saul, but sometimes you want to call something else and it's just really what you're trying to do. But most 9 times out of 10, you're going into Robertina to recycle something. And then 1 Antero just for a bigger shield just in case as well. I'm going to show off a Virginal Cecilia turn. The first thing you can do is retire one of your Musketeers to check the top 5 for another Musketeer. Call it to the rear guard circle, do any abilities that are applicable, create a token in this case. Pay the cost of Stride. Virginal Cecilia, counterblast 1, flip a Musketeer, generate the crest, get 2 force markers, place them here. You can use the inherited skill once more, retire another Musketeer, check top 5 again, create another token, call another card from your hand, use her skill, counterblast 1, retire 4, these 2, check top 7, call 4 Musketeers, skills, prove first to countercharge, Tori, retire itself, check top 3, skills, do Saul, call crit trigger, counterblast 1 to activate the trigger, all effects to Vanguard if you want. Now do these skills, token, countercharge 2, here, use Virginal Cecilia skill, return 5 normal Musketeers, call them to the front, crest activates, draw 2 cards, they each get plus 10k as well. You can attack this way first, then the Vanguard. Remember this has crit, then your next column here with the 2 force markers stacked. Back to your turn, ride a reverse, get another force marker here. Then stride into Katrina. Katrina skill, flip a Cyclone. You have at least 4 face up in the G zone, so call 4 tokens. Attack, really big. Attack, boost its skills. Get these cards, generate a token here, put this second usurp into the drop. Sword charge 1, of course, with the grade 1. Call a token, over here. First, second, third. Attack Cecilia reverse, 43 minimum, and you can boost with the token if you want more pressure. And the battle skill, lock these tokens fizzle, bind and rewrite, get another force marker here. The usurps call themselves. You can attack, this is 53, then on attack skill, counterblast 1, retire this column, check top 5, call 2 cards, drive checks first, draw a card, second, nothing. This Cecilia can attack, 53 again, skill, because this is a new instance, lock these 2. Since there's a front lock, this rewrites back into a Vanguard. It's normal Cecilia, so no force marker generation. You can call an Usurp spell, and then you can attack with Vanguard, another draw trigger, and then attack again with Usurp. And that's the deck profile, amigos. I hope you enjoyed it. So I'm having a lot of fun with Musketeers. Again, just being able to use some new cards to be able to help out with certain situations, certain scenarios. I think this is a welcome addition with the Deckset support. If you haven't picked up Musketeers at all, I do definitely recommend picking up the Deckset. It has a lot of the main stuff that you're looking for already. And I made a how to upgrade your Musketeer deck video over here too. You can click on the link in the description too, just to see what else that you need if you want to kind of deviate. But a lot of what I mentioned there is already in this deck too. I feel like it's just the more impactful cards really, to be honest. But I know other players are trying out different Musketeer cards, and you can have like a different focus build if you really want to as well. There's a lot of flexibility in that regard. It really just depends on what your goal is with the deck as well. There are people that just don't care for the Cecilia reverse as well, but most players that I've seen do care for that play because it's such an impactful play as well. Again, let me know in the thoughts what you guys are playing, play testing, what cards are, maybe some matchup stuff. Definitely love to communicate with the community as well. And if you want to support the channel, use the affiliated links such as 50 Card Shop, Trading Card Min, TCG Player, Card Trade Zero, and also check out Dueling Guard's phenomenal anime deck boxes and also sleeves that are available now, Dragon Slayer sleeves as well, so that you can increase your anime swag overall. On to the next one, amigos. Bye!